Hi,
Hi.
welcome back. Honkai Star Rail content had a pretty sizable downfall ever since Castorius' global passive because so many content creators quit the game. There was lots of drama with a certain CC, my channel started dying. Star Rail became stupider and greedier than ever, introducing a go to warp screen the moment you log into the game, which means they're desperate, and things could go either way. I'm really looking forward to Sensor Tower's April report. But either way, today, I wanted to make a video about my own honest review for Honkai Star Rail. Now honestly, I've been pretty down ever since quitting this game, not only because I don't really have a main game to make videos on anymore, but also because I lost what used to be a genuinely great game that I had a lot of fun with. I thought after quitting this game I was due an honest review of everything the game has to offer, and yes, even though I did say I wouldn't make any more videos on it, but still, I have a lot of things I want to say about this game, and I want to keep this as unbiased as possible, and be as genuine and honest as possible. Obviously, I'm very dissatisfied and disappointed with the game, so there may be a little extra spice in my words, but keep in mind that in the end, before I quit, I genuinely just wanted the game to be better. So, in this video, let's take a look at everything Star Rail has to offer from early game to end game, character and story design, player maintenance, and developer handling. Before we start though, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and join the Express Friend Discord server for a fun and lovely community to hang out with, and for pictures of my cat. Now let's get on to it. First, I want to talk about character visual design and kit design. Then, I want to talk about early game experience, then mid-game experience and player maintenance. Then I want to talk about the end-game experience and how the developers handled their game. So to start with the first topic, I think Star Rail definitely has the best looking characters out of all mainstream gacha games right now. Wuthering Waves has a very strong case, especially with Cantorella's release, holy fuck. But Star Rail's character design is absolutely amazing. On an unrelated note though, I think Enfield may make even better looking characters, but Enfield is still 4 months away, so. Star Rail has created really beautiful characters, really cute characters, muscular characters. The only character I would call genuinely just ugly and badly designed is Jiacho, because look at this fucking guy. I personally see no flaw in Honkai Star Rail's visual character design, or just visuals in general. I would play any game that looks anything like Honkai Star Rail, and I would probably enjoy it a lot. Although visual character design is where they excel, character kit design is where they fail horribly. Character kits at the start were fine, even though some like Jing Yuan had very stupid weaknesses, like getting CC'd and doing all damage, but for the most part, early kits were fine. Although later on, it became apparent that some were very flawed. The more HP inflation became a problem, and the more single target damage was phased out, Zila couldn't proc her resurgence as much as she could before, and her damage was more than half because of that. Blade's very low multipliers and low amount of FUAs and proper support units became a problem, the more power creep became a problem, and so did Jingliu's downtime and Danhangayel's insane skill point expenditure. Never mind their very low multipliers compared to new characters. With every new character they messed up the balance of their game more and more. The first was Acheron not only having much higher multipliers than anyone before her, but also for whatever reason gave herself 20% all-type resistance shred, which means her damage was way too high and way miles above the rest for no reason. Then Superbright came along as well as Firefly with her free fire implant for no f***ing reason, then Fei Xiao with her stupidly high multipliers and also an ability to reduce weaknesses for no reason. You get the point with every new character, especially the latest ones like Herda, Aglaia, Maide, and Castries, even support units like Tribi. It became apparent that they don't know how to properly make character kits without breaking their game's rules. I've talked about this before. The game has a set list of rules when it comes to the gameplay, which are the weakness types and path systems, and every new character broke something and had a kit that is way too bloated with way too many self-buffs, needless team buffs, or resistance penetration and weakness implants. They also made some really terrible kit design choices with Aglaia and Maide, giving them massive flaws in their kits that can only be fixed with purchasing their Eidolons, like Aglaia's energy issue and Maide's auto attack. Let's not forget Castries' global passive and the implication that she has for the future, but I spoke about this so much that I really don't want to speak about it anymore. While the fun factor of their kit design is immaculate, each character being pretty different from the others, their kits are way too broken and unbalanced, and they ruin the game more and more with every new character, either refusing to make a character without power creep or simply not knowing how to properly sell one if they are not stronger than every character before them. This is something that makes me very heated, and a topic that I will get very angry while discussing, and it's incredibly disappointing, so let's just move on. The next thing I want to talk about is something pretty positive, actually. The first time I played Star Rail, I was still a little dumb Genshin player who thought Star Rail was just going to be a cheap copy of Honkai 3rd in Genshin. which was very stupid of me because
It's
we
the
all know
biggest
what
piece
Genshin
of
is
dog
like these
shit.
days, and the first time I played Star Rail, I played it for probably 18 hours straight because I think it genuinely has the best player experience in the early game. I still imagine going back and playing on a new account, and it still seems fun to me when I imagine it. It's incredibly nostalgic looking back on it, and I really wish I still felt this way about Star Rail, and I'm really disappointed with the way they ruined the game for me. So why is Star Rail's early game experience so damn good? The first thing you have to mention is how good the Belobog story is. It's short and sweet, simple and straight to the point. It does not have the weaknesses of any of the other stories, it does not have any pacing issues like the Shanjo, and it is not more than like 20 hours long like Penacony and Amphorius. It is definitely Star Rail's best story. Players like to call Penacony better than Belobog, but I believe that is still because we were in a honeymoon phase for the game during Penacony and didn't realize the several misgivings of the story like the endless amount of yap, as well as characters like Firefly and Acheron releasing which were super hype, so players were blind to all the negatives during Penacony. Enough about Penacony though, this is about the early game experience. Belobog being so damn good and honestly being one of the best stories I've ever experienced in a gacha game, let alone gaming in general. The early exploration in Belobog was also very simple yet very effective. I think it perfectly fit a game like Honkai Star Rail, honestly unlike all the exploration I've seen in Amphorius. What I mean by this is that Star Rail is way more combat focused than exploration focused, so focusing on the exploration with complex puzzles that force you to spend time on them instead of the combat isn't something the game should be doing. Belobog's puzzles were very simple and straightforward, there's no way to be confused and there's always a fight. In Amphorius, and even in Penacony, I think that puzzles got way too complicated. While this is definitely not a skill issue because I could still solve all of them, it definitely took a lot more time for the same amount of reward. I think the Shanjo also had way better puzzles and its early experience is great, but we'll talk about it in a bit. I also think the formidable foes in Herta Space Station and Belobog, and yes, even the early ones in the Shanjo, are also much more fun than the ones in Amphorius because they are an actual challenge. Of course, this is because you are much stronger in Amphorius and Penacony than you are in the Space Station and Belobog. However, since the game was still new, the enemies were unique and each foe was different enough from the others to make it seem challenging. Formidable foes should be formidable, and right now you can just do whatever you want to beat them. Now, I don't really play Amphorius a lot, honestly, but I don't even recall fighting a single formidable foe. This could either be because there are actually none, which is probably not the case and I hope it isn't, or because any of the formidable foes I fought were absolutely not formidable. However, I remember so many of the early formidable foes I fought in the early stages of the game. I loved every part of it. You also can't talk about the early game experience without talking about the absolutely wonderful gameplay the early simulated universe had. Now, I will talk about ornaments and relics later, but for now, I think we can all agree how shit ornament farming was in the early simulated universe, and the fixes they made for it in the Divergent universe were really good. But let's ignore that for a second, because the gameplay experience in the Divergent universe, in my opinion, is way worse and way less fun than the world system in the old simulated universe. As soon as they ditched the world system, the simulated universe became way less fun and way more of a chore. They completely took out the fun roguelike mode and made it only for farming ornaments, which, like I will talk about later, I think is a very not fun system. The early simulated universe had a perfect system, each world having different levels and rewards for each level that felt like they were significant. Every time you went from one level to the next, it felt like you were progressing more and more. And while that inevitably slows down in a gacha game once you reach max level, how well they did it in Star Rail is absolutely commendable. I loved every part of the early simulated universe, and I really hate how they ditched it for the DU. The Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears are in the same boat as this. As soon as they ditched modes like those for the DU and whatever the fuck Unknowable Domain was, it got a lot worse, but they're not really early games, so we'll talk about those later. Finally, the rewards you get early game are plentiful. You get lots of Jades and a lot of Star Rail passes. You can reroll accounts and get a free 5-star in every rerolled account in 30 minutes to an hour as soon as you finish the Space Station quest. There's an insane amount of Jades and passes to collect that help you reach the 50 pity in the starter banner, so in conclusion, the early game experience in Honkai Star Rail is absolutely f***ing great. It's one of the best, if not the best, in a gacha game that I've ever seen. As I said, I played it for nearly 18 hours straight, only stopping to go to sleep for a few hours after I pulled an all-nighter playing it. I loved every second of it, and I would pay good money to see Star Rail be as good as it was back then. Now I want to talk about midgame and player maintenance. If you don't get what I mean by player maintenance, it's basically what you, the player, have to do in order to progress through the game. I want to discuss events including the simulated universe expansions, how character progression feels, and the bane of my f***ing existence and yours, also known as the test of luck out of Satan's anus, also known as what probably caused Tectone to go bald, relics. First off though, events when Starwell came out were absolutely great. The museum event wasn't the best, but still had a lot of character cameos, which was pretty fun. The Pokemon event was a community favorite, the side events were fun, having a lot of combat and a lot of player input, but with each update the events became worse and worse. We used to have 2 to 3 events every single update, but now we are lucky for the main event to even have any content at all. The 3.0 main event was barely 20 minutes of content, with the side event being pure fiction with extra buffs. The 3.1 event was almost completely AFK, and the 3.2 events look like ass. I absolutely loved what they did with the events before, especially with the March event because she's my favorite character, even though its rebirth system was a really bad choice for the event overall, but other than that, events like the War Dance and the others we already mentioned before were great. There has been a huge drop in quality of events and it's really disappointing. This is also the same for the simulated universe events. A lot of people don't like the Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears because they take a long time to complete, even one level up. However, I think that's where the fun lies. I'm the type of person to want to sink hours into gameplay, and the gameplay in both Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears was really damn good. Swarm Disaster was already a great canvas, but Golden Gears went and improved a whole lot upon it, and I really loved both events. They were for sure very grindy, but also very rewarding, and that's what I enjoyed about them. With the Divergent Universe, it seems they're not making another simulated universe expansion, which is incredibly disappointing. Take a shot every time I say disappointing in this video. Now, the Divergent Universe isn't unfun in and of itself, but after like the first 30 minutes of experiencing it, it just becomes an RNG fest, and even if they did improve the RNG in the last update, it's still just an RNG fest, but with better RNG. Now, Golden Gears and Swarm Disaster may have been very RNG related, but since you could see the hexagon map, you could plan out where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do, and especially with the dice system GNG introduced, which gave birth to many fun strategies which you simply cannot do in the Divergent Universe. All you do in the Divergent Universe is just pick reward, game, and occurrence domains, and hope you get lucky. It sucks compared to the old ones, honestly. And now I would talk about how bad the Unknowable Domain was, but I really don't want to waste too much breath on it. That f***ing sucked. I've never played a worse game mode in my life. This was complete f***ing ass. All the characters you pulled for and built don't matter for f***ing shit. I hated everything about this mode. Something I also hate everything about is relics. F*** relics. It feels good when you get a good piece, but then you get f***ed over for another 5 months without ever getting another piece. It f***ing sucks. Relic systems are only designed to keep you addicted to the game and only designed to keep you playing every single day. They're not designed for you to have fun. They're not designed for your account to be unique to you. Their only purpose is to be predatory and annoying and sink you deeper into the sunk cost fallacy. I hate relic systems. Other than that though, character progression in Starwell with trace materials and boss materials is pretty damn good. Boss domains and calyxes aren't time locked, you can usually get a character built in a week or two and it's really good. I think Starwell definitely has character progression aside from the relic system, if you can even call that progression, down to a T. Good job on that one, Starwell. Finally, we get to talk about endgame and developer handling, which I've talked about a lot before. Starwell has 3 modes, and while they are different enough from each other to be 3 different modes, they are still basically just a race against time. I personally don't have a big issue with the fact they're all just do it as fast as possible, but I do know players and content creators who would have liked more variety. Unfortunately though, I don't think they're adding any new endgame modes for a very long time. Overall, the handling for the MOC, Apocalyptic Shadow, and Pure Fiction is pretty fine, if you ignore all the HP inflation and new limited character favoritism. If you are missing a unit that wasn't released since 2 or 3 patches ago, you are f***ed basically. If you're missing Aglaia, Castoris, Maide, or Herda, and if you also don't have incredibly high investment Fei Xiao and Acheron teams, you're pretty f***ed. I must have talked about this 1,000 times, but the only thing they ever seem to do with their endgame content is cater it to the newest characters who also power creep all previous characters. If you're someone who has any favorite unit older than 3.0, and if you're someone who doesn't have a severe gambling addiction they have to remedy with every single new character dropped, or if none of the new characters are very appealing to you, well, you're f***ed in terms of endgame. Even A6 Dan Hangayel and A6 Jingliu are worse than Maide and Herda respectively, and it's really pathetic how a game can go this far with power creep and how they handle their endgame content. And honestly, since I spoke about this so much before, I don't really have anything else to say, especially because this video is already so long. I have way more detailed videos about some of the topics in this video, so if you're interested, go check those out. But now, let me summarize my thoughts. Starwell is a very high quality game. It looks, sounds, and runs very well. It has all the basic foundations for a good game, and has a great early game experience. However, as soon as you enter the mid-game, you start suffering with things like relics, divergent universe, unknowable domain, and most likely not enjoy Storm Disaster and Golden Gears, even though I did say I enjoyed them, but most people probably don't. However, you will find guaranteed character progression like Trace's pretty satisfying. Once you reach the endgame though, you'll notice how extremely reliant their marketing tactic is on power creep and HP inflation, and how much they don't understand or don't care how to balance character kits. Finally, the story used to be absolutely amazing, and now it really f***ing sucks. I don't want anybody telling me, but the story is still really good, when the storytelling is absolute garbage. You can watch the Minecraft movie 6 times before you finish the 3.2 story once. I didn't steal that quote from anybody, shut up. A game story shouldn't be longer than 3 hours, and a good storyteller would give you all the information you need without endless amounts of yap. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more gacha and game analysis videos in the future, and join the Expressway Discord server for a fun and lovely community to hang out with, and for pictures of my cat. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.